Welcome back to Beyond the Buckets. Jason Holzer, welcome to the program.
Hey, Chris, what's going on, man? Thank you for having me today. Appreciate being on here.
Great to see you and talk to you as always. So, why don't we start off with the bang? Tell everybody something they may not know about you, and we'll get into a bunch of your background in just a little bit. But maybe a fun fact for the people out there.
I sleep with socks on 365, and people might think that's like he does what, but yeah, I've been a sock guy. I can't sleep without socks on very well.
In the wintertime, I definitely sleep with my socks on. But in the summertime, I'm trying to remove as much clothing as possible. So,
I know.
And the socks are definitely first.
That's why people think I'm crazy. Like, wait, it's 100 degrees outside. Like, I know, man, but I don't know what it is, but I can't do it. Some bare feet. Maybe I could get used to it at some point, but yeah.
When my hair was shorter, I would wear a hoodie or sometimes a beanie because I didn't like to put the heat on in the house, to keep the bills down. But now since we've got two small kids, my wife puts the heat on during the wintertime at night for them. So I'm extremely sweaty.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get rid of my clothing, but yeah.
Dude,
it's
funny story. In college, saving money, right? I went to Springfield, Missouri State in Springfield, Missouri, and it was so cold. Like I was in the upstairs of a house. I slept with a beanie on, and I saw my breath inside my house. I just, trying to save money, man. I was like, oh man, I don't go back to those days ever again.
No, I get it. I mean, I remember being up in college in Oregon and having the space heater there because we didn't want to have the thermostat up, but just having a space heater just to be warm. So interesting, those fun college days for sure. Why don't you give everybody a 2-3 minute backstory on you, and we're gonna go a bunch of different ways, but you have a really interesting backstory.
Yeah, man. I remember playing. I love playing basketball and sports in general ever since I was like, 6, 7 years old. Since I could learn to dribble and throw a baseball, you name it. And I was pretty good as a younger kid. And the thing that happened to me though was in middle school. I went through a phase of where I was bullied a lot, and it really wrecked my self confidence. I went from being a really good player at middle school level to ended up my freshman year being the last one cut for my freshman basketball team, and I thought, I was for sure going to play in high school, but I was so worried about what other people were thinking of me. And so it limited me from trying my best because I was worried about fitting in.
Right.
And so, and I went back my sophomore year, I made my sophomore year, but then I was on the sophomore team. And we all know, if you're on the sophomore team, that's kind of like no man's land. It's like it's either you, not very many people go beyond that. And so I ended up only playing 1 year of high school basketball, and I really regret it because when I played pickup in college, they were like, oh man, where'd you play at school? And I would tell them, you only played 1 year? I was like, yeah, I did. And then getting out of college, be like, hey, where'd you play in college? Because I kept playing, obviously, and I was like, well, I didn't play in college. Like, you didn't play small school ball? I'm like, no, I didn't. So that was like a reminder to me, hey, you know what? Instead of trying to fit in, stand out, stand out above and don't worry about what other people think, because they don't live your life. And so I try to work on inspiring. Now I've been a teacher and a coach for 11, 12 years, and just trying to help, kids inspire to be the best that they can be, and not worry about the noise of what other people think.
Right. No, that's beautiful. I mean, that tension and that stress that you had as a young person has made you the person that you are today and doing all the great things that you're doing. So, was that the path that may have you envisioned for yourself? Probably not, but that's the path that, you were led by, and now you're doing so many other things and helping so many other people because of the past experiences that you had. And, that's very important.
Yeah, and your story can be related to everybody. And unfortunately, whenever I talk to people, no, I don't have the most glamorous playing career, right? And I don't. And even my coaching career, I started a basketball program at an urban city charter school, And most kids are used to playing soccer. They're mostly Hispanic kids. And, we didn't win a game for 3 years. Like we literally lost every game for 3 years.
Yeah.
But what kept me going was keeping those kids off the street. That was the win for me. Like it gave them something to do, it gave them to be a part of something that was bigger than themselves, that was productive, that they were going to learn something about like how to be a great person. And that's what we can use sports to do is, the wins on the scoreboard are great, but winning people, like building better people through sports, man, like that's when we truly win in life.
Yeah. Um, Previously on this podcast, we've had a young lady on. Her name was Jenny Fisher. She works for the NBA now, and she had an inspiring story on, that I found online, and I reached out and we talked. And then, once we got to talking, she told me that her mother had committed suicide when she was 14 years old, and just the impact. And she goes into great detail about her story. And suicide has hit your family as well, pretty close. So, tell me about that experience for you and your family, and growing up in that, and that'll lead into some other things that we discuss as well.
Yeah, man, it's and that may have played a role too of my sports in high school because I lost my dad to suicide at the end of my junior year. I was 17, almost turning 18. And he was the last person that you would have thought, like, he was involved. My parents were together for 20 years. He was funny, was involved in the community. And one day he was here and the next day he wasn't.
Wow.
And as a 17-year-old, that's whenever you're like, oh, I'm almost an adult. Like, what does that mean? What does it mean to be and you learn responsibility a little bit. Like I had some, a job at a grocery store, a job detailing cars, like that stuff you do as a teenager to kind of learn some of those things, but nothing like, how do you handle grief of a devastating loss like that? And it doesn't matter how old you are, it's tough, but really trying to figure out who you are. Um, it's tough to fully understand.
Uh, and just to go in a little bit further detail, did he leave a note, or was there any type of, so you guys were left with just so many questions unanswered?
Yeah, there was, unfortunately, there was nothing, man. Like there was literally nothing. And my family and I searched for years, hoping to find something, and we don't know. And so the question of why always rang in my head, and I went through some, my 17 to 25-year-old years questioning, am I enough? Like, was it me? Like, and then feeling abandonment, resentment, all those like negative things that you thought maybe some you could have done differently to make it. And eventually I had to come to a point of forgiveness. I had to come to a point of accept, like, and what I mean by acceptance, like, this is it. I can't change what has happened. The only thing I can do is what can I do ahead of time to create my own future? Because the past, it is what it is, and there's nothing I can do to bring him back. There's nothing I can do to try to, um, make the situation besides try to change my future.
Yeah.
And that's what I went on a path of discovery of deep healing of facing it as opposed to running from it in order to be able to step into who I think I'm, on my path in life. Yeah.
How did you get to that point? It's like, I haven't had to deal with that personally. I don't know anybody that has committed suicide. Uh, you know, Thankfully, but knock on wood. But just hearing the experience, I can just tell how hurt you probably were in that moment. How do you get to the point of forgiveness? For a lot of people, they don't ever get to that point. But what was it like for you to get to that point?
I think, for me, when I met my wife at the end of college, it was like, I got to be different. I got to figure this out because if I want her to stay with me, I have to prove to her that I'm keeping my mind fit, my mind well. Because what if she's thinking, well, oh man, this happened to like, would this happen to him? And then I have my two boys now, 4 and 1. I'm like, gosh, I gotta be there for my boys. Like no matter how old they are, I gotta be there for them. and I started like learning, like, I'm a man of faith. I grew up going to church, and I believe in God wholeheartedly. I believe in spirituality. And I learned that forgiveness is more about doing it for yourself as opposed to the other person.
Hmm.
I learned that forgiveness is like, hey, um, if you can let things go, and if you can learn to um, learn from the past, then you become a better person because things don't have hold on you anymore. Like forgiveness is something you do for yourself. A lot of people think like forgiveness is something you do for somebody else. Like, no, it's really like not allowing other people's decisions shackle you and hold you back. That's
Right.
really what at the foundation of forgiveness. That's what it is. You're not allowing somebody else's decisions to have an effect on your life.
Right. Um, one of the well, everybody knows who The Rock is. Obviously, he's an international superstar. But his it was his dad's anniversary of his passing, and he was, The Rock does a bunch of these motivational. It's The Rock. He's bigger than life, literally, and he is, kind of getting emotional, but he goes back to the fact that his dad always told him life goes on. So even when I'm not here, life goes on. And so, he was basically praising the fact that life goes on and we can't control what actually happens to us a lot of the time, but you can control your attitude and your mindset moving forward. And it sounds like a similar point to where you came. The healing process was understanding that life does go on and you have to be there for your family, your sons, and moving on, but always remembering the probably good times that you had with your father.
Yeah, and that's what I try to do is now remember the great things that he did teach me, because he taught me like work ethic. He taught me how to be funny, be yourself. Like while he was in the 17 years I had him, there's a lot of great things I did learn from him. And another thing was, after he passed, I really got curious about the mind and like and how powerful your thoughts are. And so I started diving into personal growth. I started diving into like how do we as humans function.
Right.
And when I started to dive into that, like and understanding like everything has a positive and a negative, like there's equal opposites. And so for every deep negative, there's also an exact opposite positive. And when you can get to a place like that where you can kind of see things as is, either positive or negative, not necessarily good or bad, because good and bad is a very like subjective thing. Like what you might see as good, I might not. I might see as opposite. Like you might be allergic to strawberries, and I might love strawberries.
Yeah.
So strawberries might be the worst thing in the world for you, but for me, I love them.
Right.
And so I'm almost getting to a point now where I've been without my dad for as long as I've had him. Like it's coming up on that point where it's like 17 years and 10 months without him, and I had 17 years and 10 months with him. And that's like next month. I think it's March 7th is what I have the date on my calendar as the day. And I see where my life is at now, and I'm just filled with gratitude. Yeah, I miss him every day, but I have a wonderful wife. I have two amazing boys. I'm building a business that's our goal is to transform 100 million lives using sports in 10 years, focusing on digital content, personal growth, mentoring, and I'm like, wow, like I never thought that if you would have told me at 17, like this is what you'd be doing, I was like, dude, you're crazy, man. There's no way. Look at my life right now. How is that going to happen?
Right.
But it's through faith, man, and believing in yourself that you can truly do what you were called to do if you just believe in yourself. And
Right.
that's what it comes down to.
No doubt. And as you're talking about, the time that you actually had with your dad is 17 years and 10 months. My dad is still alive, but I haven't had him around. He wasn't around for 17 years of my life. He was probably around for maybe 10 of those years. And it's he's never met his grandchildren to this day. And it's almost like I have lost him, but it's a different feeling knowing that he is still here, but he's not a part of my current life, and he was barely a part of my adolescence, but he was there in the beginning. So it's just interesting how everybody's perspective is different, and I don't.
Which in some
Go ahead.
ways that, Chris, that can be almost as tough, if not tougher, right?
Yeah,
I mean, like knowing he's out there, and so I hope that for you that you find strength in being a great father. And I think it's ironic that two different similar situations, but have driven us to be wanting to be a great father for the long term.
right.
It's in some ways we felt like we've lost our dad unrelated in two different ways, but has given us a similar mission.
For sure. No, it's definitely strengthened me overall, because my kids will always know me, and I'm always going to be in their life no matter what. Uh, that's just a fact. It's not up for any type of negotiation. I will always be there for my children. And I will say this, like, he was there for the first 8 years of my life, and then he and my mom split up, and then he kind of went through some financial things, but he thought that, being a father was, financially driven, where you provide these things
Mm,
for your kids. But I didn't need any of the finances. All I needed was his time. And so,
presence, yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
from there, he was kind of in my life intermittently from, 8 to 15, and then he moved up to Oregon, and then he moved out to back home to Omaha, Nebraska, where he's at right now. And I just never really saw him. He did come to my wedding, so he was there. Maybe about 6 years ago, 5 years ago, I went out there and I saw him, and we talked. But there were so many different things that I learned from his childhood of what happened to him, being abused, and being put in the foster care system when my grandmother remarried, and just so many different stories that I had no clue about, and now they come to surface. But the one thing that kept me in the right mindset was my mother always said, "Your dad loves you. He just can't be here for you, and don't hold any judgment towards him." And so my heart has always been clear as far as any animosity towards him because of what my mom said. So had my mom, f him or da da da, your dad is this and that, I might have had a different story. But because my mom was strong enough to understand that this could affect my life in a negative way, she painted it in a positive way, and in turn, it's helped me in all other aspects of my life.
That's really powerful for your mom to have that perspective, to mold you as a child, like to see the positive spin on that. I mean, that's an amazing way for your mom, who could have easily taken that other route because of
Definitely.
whatever situation, but for her to see past that, I mean, that probably has really helped maybe shape you as a father, even more so than maybe anything else.
Absolutely. And I've talked about it before, but my mom has instilled me with so much confidence. And now I see her do it with my children, when she watches them. And my son's is Chris Jr. So, anything that he does, if he shoots a basket, she's like, "Oh yeah." She gets so excited about him. And like, she pumps him up with so much and I was like, okay, that's where I got it from, because even if I do fail, I literally, it doesn't really bother me. I always move on to the next thing, because I've always been formed that way. She formed me in that way, and I'm so thankful that she did.
Yeah, that's incredible, man. That's sometimes our mothers have a way of just knowing when, like, they're so much more emotionally connected. They can just say things in a way that men can't really do in a certain ways, like because we haven't never been like trained like how to use our emotions. But I don't know, man, it's something about that's the beauty of moms, is they always kind of know how to guide you in the right direction.
For sure. I want to know how you were able to get to the point where you're able to comfortably talk about it, because until like last year, um, I wasn't really comfortable talking outward about my relationships with, my family and stuff like that. And I got asked to speak at our chapel at school. And we have close to 2,000 students, so they're, hey, come and speak with whatever's on your heart. And I was just thinking I wanted to talk about so many different things, and and then all of a sudden my dad gave me a call like out of the blue. And I was thinking, and the talk was basically about perspectives and changing your perspective. There was an artist that created this unbelievable painting. They start throwing all this paint up on the wall, And this was like a few weeks before, and that stayed in my mind for whatever reason. And then all of a sudden, he turns it upside down, and it was a beautiful picture of Jesus. And it was just amazing how he just throws all this paint together, and all of a sudden he flip it upside down, and it's a beautiful, beautiful picture
Wow.
of Jesus.
Yeah.
And so I was always trying to change. Something was going on with me and saying, flip your perspective. And then I said, when I talked to him, I said, I'm getting ready to speak. I just wanted to get one more perspective, and it was yours. And so we had a really good talk, and it kind of formed my discussion points with the group. And yeah, it turned out really good, and a bunch of people reached out after. But you've been doing this now as a post traumatic growth storyteller and speaker. So what was your basically like nudge in the back to get you to speak about this sort of stuff?
Yeah. It's funny. I work with Breakthrough Basketball, and we do basketball camps across the nation. I've been a lead clinician for them for about 4 years now, and one of my camps was in Eastern Ohio, like almost closer to Pittsburgh, and I was by myself driving, and sometimes I like to just drive with the radio off, just in just silence, and every once in a while, I feel like God speaks to me and says the word "right" came to my head over and over again. I'm like, "Right." I mean, I'm not an author. I'm not, nothing in my background says write a book, right? But then I got back and I told my wife, I was like, I think I'm supposed to write a book. She's like, about what? I'm like, my story with my dad. She's like, oh, are you ready for that? I'm like, no, not really. But I thought of all the people that I could help. Like maybe if I telling the story from my firsthand perspective and the things that I've done to heal from that, to grow from that, and go from a suicide loss survivor to a life thriver, and maybe somebody else would hear that message and it would save one person's life, or make one person feel like they could be a better father, and that whatever situation they're going through it will pass, then it was worth it for me. And so another thing too was, I meet new people like yourself and say, hey, well, what do your parents do? And I'm like, well, my mom, she works and help kids in schools, and as a cafeteria woman, she prepares all their food for them as a manager. So that's a really super important job. And then my dad was an electrician. He was like, what do you mean? Like, yeah, he passed away. And oh, how? And then every time you mention suicide to people, that they feel they don't know how to say I'm sorry. Like, it's very hard to explain and beyond that. And so it was I was like, well, in order to not have as many, awkward conversations, I'll just share with the world about, what happened. And so now I can have conversations with you. It's transparency. It's out there, and we can really get into the meat and potatoes of things that really transform people.
Right. And so you wrote this book, you become a Amazon best-selling author. How did you start writing the book, and how long did it take you? Well, just give me a high-level overview of the process before, becoming a Amazon bestseller.
You know, I did use my skills in sports to build a habit. Like you don't become a great jump shooter overnight, right? Like it takes making 100 shots a day, 150 shots, 500 shots if you Steph Curry a day, over consistently over a period of time. And so I dedicated myself. I put a time on the. I decided I was going to write it. I put a time on the clock, like 3 o'clock p.m. every day. I'm going to write for 45 minutes, for an hour. And then I had a goal of like, I'm going to get 500 words a day. Just type 500 words a day. My goal is to get to 40,000, but I'm going to get 500 words a day. And so I did that, for a whole summer. And it just started building every day. And if you do it consistently at the same time, like it was funny, my mind would actually get into a mode of it's time to write. And so I would just get into a flow quicker the longer I did it. And I wasn't very good at it at first. I would have writer's block sometimes. I'm like, man, like it would hurt to think. But then it's almost like an airplane getting off the runway. Put all your energy in that first 80 minutes, and then you get up there, you start flowing. Then all of a sudden the words just start to come to you. So that's kind of how we, like in a basketball game, you got your warm ups, you got your focus on. And sometimes, you might have games where like, oh man, I wasn't in the flow of it. But then some days you're lights out because like everything's falling. You're just in the zone, like everything's flowing. So that's what I tried to do, man, was just get in the flow of writing it out.
Wow. So I'm assuming, and I don't know this, but you probably read Atomic Habits then.
Yeah, it's one of the books, like, it talks about identity, right? It's not necessarily about your process. It's not necessarily about your routines, or um, it's about who you become or who you say you are, right?
Right.
And so I was like, hey, I'm an author. I'm an author. What do authors do? They write. And
Yeah.
yeah, kind of coming from that standpoint of using the identity of it. And now I'm a new entrepreneur too. So I say, hey, I'm the best entrepreneur in the Midwest. I mean, I just keep saying that to myself over and over again, trying to find little clues that help affirm that. And it's who knows what will happen, but if you stay positive, that's what you get in return.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And to my earlier point, my mom was giving me that confidence. She was already telling me that I was the greatest before I even knew I was. And I'm always the greatest in my own. And everybody's a star of their own action flick, but I truly believe it, and you do too. And keeping that positivity is very important. And just to touch on Atomic Habits, for those who haven't read it, I'm actually reading it right now. So I'm on this book kick. I'm trying to read 50 books this year. Um, um, I'm on pace right now. So I've gotten 5 books in already, and it's February. So Atomic Habits is one, but it's scheduling out. I saw your email today too, because it just prompted me, because you're only checking email from that time, and this wasn't Atomic Habits. This is from the other book, 4 Hour Work Week,
Okay.
that
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just
yeah.
read. So the 4 Hour Work Week talks about setting your only checking your email twice a day, and these are the times, and you're optimizing it because you have an automatic email responder saying, because you instantly get back, I'm only checking email at these 2 times a day, and I'll get back to you within 48 hours. And that's how you optimize your time instead. And I noticed that, like, if I have my email up all day, all of a sudden, I'm I was supposed to do this task, and now, let's say I'm trying to, cut these podcasts. Now it takes me over an hour just to cut the podcast, but instead now all I'm doing is, okay, I'm going to focus on this task only, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability for this amount of times. For me, I've always been like, I used to be in sales, so the phone was attached to my hip, and I'm always checking the email, because you never know, in sales you gotta move quickly. And it's changed my habits because of, this the optimization of your time. So very important.
Yeah, it's like, and I'm not the best at it. I mean, are there days where I check it maybe more often than twice? Yeah, but at least I give people the expectation, like, hey, you know what? I'm letting you know if it takes me a couple days to get back to you. Then people are like, oh, okay, cool. So within 48 hours, then okay. It gives people like this. You lower their expectation of a response right away, because unless you set the standards for yourself, people will set them for you.
Right.
And for me, I want to set my own standards and allow people and interact with people in a way that's going to, I mean, be adaptable, but also give you the best chance to optimize yourself too.
We're very much in the same, because we have a lot of stuff going on. We are educators, so we do teach and we coach. We run basketball programs as well. We just announced our football program. We just launched, but we're entrepreneurs. We're doing a bunch of different things, and we have family as well. So we need to be able to optimize our time so efficiently, because if you don't, then you're just going to lose track, and then things are going to slip through the cracks. And that's one thing that I admire about you for sure, among the many things.
Yeah, man. And I took this from Kobe Bryant too. He always was like, you know what? I get my work in before my kids wake up or after they go to bed. And in between when they're awake, I'm present with them. And I was like, yeah. So I mean, there's some days I get up between 4 and 4:30 almost every day. And then I might not go. I mean, and I know sleep is important, don't get me wrong. But when you have this obsession of like, I want to reach this goal because it's gonna help this many people, you find the energy. Like you really, I mean, you wake up like jumping out of bed, and some days I'll sleep in a little bit longer if I kind of try, like my body, like, man, I'm just really tired today. But man, like, you know, just having those couple hours in the morning to get your day going before everybody else is even woken up, I feel like can really get you like feeling good about yourself too.
Right.
But so that's another habit I've gotten into. And my wife thinks I'm absolutely nuts. She's like, "You're waking up at what time?" I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, this is what I got to do right now to get it done." She's like, well, I'm gonna be asleep, so don't wake me up. I'm like, "Cool, got it." So yeah.
Right. My son wakes up between 4 and 5 every morning, no matter what time he goes to bed.
Oh man.
Yeah, we would love to actually,
Woo.
if we could get that time, like in the mornings. But he's always up so super early, so he actually beats us up on most days. So it's just interesting. But we would love the time in the morning um, to have and do some things like that. But he just beats us up. I don't know. I mean, weird thing.
Hey, one day you'll sleep later, man. One day you
One day,
have a
well,
hard time getting out of bed, right?
yeah, exactly. And then, yeah, we're like, hey, man, you got to get up. You can't sleep all day. So we'll see when that changes or not. Um, Talk to me about what is a certified thought coach?
Yeah, it's I went through this process and it connected with me because losing my dad to suicide, and I heard it this way one time that when people die of suicide, it's not that they're trying to end their life, they're trying to end the thoughts that are in their head, because it's consuming them. It's a negative spiral, and they're trying to find any way to get to stop thinking those thoughts. And what happens is that the only way they think is to end their life. And so for me, a thought coach is like being able to challenge your thoughts when they start, the ones that don't serve you, release and replace those thoughts with things that are empowering, things that are encouraging, things that will take you to another level, because your mentality creates your reality. And if you're thinking negative, you're gonna this is how our thought process works. If you think of like the rain cycle, very similar. Thoughts equal emotions, emotions equal actions, actions equal reactions. So a lot of times we are not even aware of the thoughts that are going on in our head. And a lot of times the thoughts we're thinking aren't even our original thoughts, or something that somebody else told us, positive or negative, and they become a belief because we don't challenge them.
Right.
And your beliefs, that is who you become based on your beliefs. And so when you learn you can believe anything, like that can be really powerful or really detrimental, and anywhere in between. So why not believe you're successful? Why not believe you can, reach for the moon? Why not? Because what's the point of believing that you can't? That's not a very fun life to live. But most people don't understand that.
Right. Yeah, you're 100% right on point because you know for me, I don't like to consume a whole bunch of social media and stuff like that. After watching The Social Dilemma, and I don't know if you watch that on Netflix, but
Yeah, man, scary
I,
stuff.
I don't want that stuff being put in my head. I don't want it being put in, my family's head, whatever it may be. It may be just because I like sneakers. I don't want to have to see that over and over. So I've done a big change as far as consuming content. Like I'm not watching the news. I'll read. I get a couple newsletters that I to stay up to date on things. But I don't want to consume all this negativity. I want to consume things that are positive in my life. Like we barely even watch TV. We might watch an hour of TV, and winding down in the night. But our TV is off the majority of the day if we're home. And I think it's so important to have a clear mind and think about your own thoughts. Like my wife and I will discuss certain things, but it's like, are these your current thoughts, or are they thoughts from your friends or something like that? Because men and women are different in many ways, but one of the things is what their group is doing. A lot of them want to play towards that play towards that whole group. Or if we got our cabinets done, now every the rest, oh, the McSwain's got their stuff done, so we should probably do ours too. It's like,
Yeah,
let's
keep it up
let's
with the Joneses, right? Yeah, it's
exactly
like,
let's stay
ah.
in, let's stay in our own lane. So
Yeah. No, and it's funny because I don't know if you're familiar with who Bob Proctor is, but he says he's in the personal growth space and been doing it for like 60 years. He's like 86 years old, and he's still going after it like every day. But he says, if something's bad enough, somebody will fill me in. I don't need to watch the news. And I was like, I experimented with that. And sure enough, like neighbor told me about something that went on I didn't know about. My, mother-in-law told me about. I was like, oh, okay. So if it's really bad enough, I'll hear it from somebody. I don't need to search it out myself. And it was like, yeah, it's really like being the gatekeeper of your mind. And it's something I wish more people were aware of, because I feel like too many times, we just follow the masses and we don't even think about like the benefits or consequences, or we just go like, wow, I wasn't even thinking there. I just fell right in line, and almost like hypnosis. And sometimes, it's like, huh, it's crazy.
For sure. Trevor Moawad, who wrote "It Takes What It Takes," he did an experiment on himself. He was in a place where I think he was in the middle of a divorce or going to get divorced or something like that, and all this stuff. But he was going to use his own practices that he does with his athletes on himself. So he started listening to country music that had nothing but depressing love songs, and he started to watch the news, the opposite news. So if he was depending if you're a right wing person, you're going to watch the other. If you're a left wing, the other. And he started managing his whole lifestyle for 30 days to put all this negativity in his world to see how he can come out of it. And he couldn't get through the full 30 days. He got to like day 26 and he snapped. He called his buddy and said, I can't do this any longer. So he made the
Mm.
steps to get away from it. But it's exactly what you're talking about as far as, the things that you're putting into your mind ends up, affecting your mood overall and the type of person you are. So, very, very true stuff.
Yeah, man, it's amazing how powerful our thoughts are. And so for myself, and now it's like guarding my kids' minds too, like you mentioned. It's because kids they'll just they'll fall in line as well with us. And it goes back to this thing of like the power of association. Like who you hang around with is who you become. It's my brother-in-law once said, he's like, you're either soaring with the eagles or you're trotting with the turkeys, and you can't do both. And I was like, oh yeah, I mean, I think I'd rather soar with the eagles. So I try to be very cognizant of who I'm spending time with as well. Like, are these people ascending me or descending me? Like, are they trying to lift me up, or are they trying to bring me down? And you don't want to be like, definitely I think we should help bring people up with us, but at the same time, like, be very aware of who, you know, the company that you keep, because that's who you become.
Definitely. Tell me about 4D athletes. We actually did a test run with your program the last week or so, and it's been really cool for our team to see different things, and I like it because it's quick and it's easy, and you can go deeper if you want, but at least you're putting the thoughts in their head about being conscientious of right now. Well, the lessons that we went over is attitude, and how to have a good attitude and stuff like that. So, tell me about 40
Yeah.
athletes. What does it stand for, and what are you guys trying to do? Like you said, you're trying to reach. You said 100 million athletes in the next 10 years.
Yeah. And so it's a four-dimensional 4D athletes. Basically thinking of, if you think of, environment, mind, mental, physical, and oh shoot, I should know this: mental, physical, spiritual, and environmental. So those are the four dimensions. And we basically put a 24-week, and each one has a topic. It's all virtual content. We have a podcast, a live podcast we do every Wednesday as well. But they're micro lessons on essential life skills that we believe, if they were taught at 14 to 18, would help, with things with like identity, help with, confidence. And we want to create and develop confident, self-motivated, and empowered individuals using sports through a online course module. And this is, version 1.0, just to get started. But and we in an educational but entertaining way, where it's like, it's short, it's digestible, it's understandable, and there's one action step. So that way, hey, coaches can say, hey, just do this one thing today on the power of attitude. Just do this one thing and see how your life changes. And so that's kind of what we're trying to do, is like take each week of 5 micro lessons, a review day, a reflection day, and to get kids to think more about who they are and the skill sets that'll help them be successful in anything they do. And we can use sports to help drive that mission, because sports and life are so, like, there's so many parallels. Like, in a game, you might know how to play basketball, but you don't know how it's going to play out. In life, you're trying to learn on the go, but you don't know how life's going to play out. So there's this real authenticity with sports. They use so many teachable moments. And for us, it's like, if a kid plays sports and quits at 15, is being able to shoot a jumper going to help them 5 years down the road? Probably
Not at all.
not.
No.
But if they learned the power of attitude while they're playing basketball and they're going through a hard time, like, oh, I can get through this, as opposed to doom and gloom. That's like, oh man, I remember whenever Coach McSwain taught me about attitude. We were on a 5-game losing streak, but we bounced back, and now I can relate this to other areas of life. Like, maybe I'm trying to get married or have my first child, and it's like, I'm up all night, or you name it. But if I have a great attitude, though, I know things eventually will shift. Now that's where the transformation, that's where sports can truly make a difference in kids' lives.
Right. And if you think about it, we spend so much time on the physical part of coaching, well, any sport really. But if you're not coaching the mind as well, then what are you really getting out of it? Because any, I wouldn't say any, but most great coaches or good coaches, they want to coach good people. And if you're coaching good people, the score will take care of itself.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Bill Walsh's book, the score will take care of itself if your processes are in a correct manner. The kids that I've had the best relationships aren't always the best players. It's the best
Mm.
people. Like the best people, the best young people that I've dealt with. Like I'd be willing to do anything for them because they were just great, wholesome, all around people that really cared about others before themselves. And in turn, it's end up helping them so much. And they're going to be successful in all walks of life. If you think of your team captains, who are the people that are supposed to be the best players on the team, not necessarily, but these people, these individuals are showing everybody else the way on how things go. And leaders are always in demand. Like my buddy Alan Stein says, leaders are always going to be in demand. They're always going to be able to get jobs. As leadership can be a great thing, or, bad leaders can really fail a whole bunch of people if they're in power and they don't really know how to lead, and they're not, leading with the right intentions in mind. So um,
Yeah, and leadership is changing too, right? The old authoritarian side of leadership doesn't work these days. Like, it just doesn't. Like, it's more of a collaborative. It's more of like making people feel like their voice is heard. Seeking opinions. It's not like, hey, the old style leadership. Hey, you do this, I tell you to do it. That doesn't work anymore. And so it's evolving with what leadership is. And a part of our philosophy at 4D Athletes is better people make better players. If we can create great people, you're gonna get great players. And it's the John Wooden adage as well. Like, he talks about the pyramid of success. Like, you do these things and you're gonna be successful. And my good buddy Jonathan Flowers, who played for the Raiders, talks a lot of times. He was like, the mind, train the mind and the body will follow. But like you mentioned, we're training the physical 95% of the time. We're spending 5 to 8% on the mental, when maybe it should be the opposite.
right.
Because if the mind trains the body, we're not training the mind enough. And you see so many kids are losing their emotions. They don't know how to handle. They don't know how to lose with grace or win with humility. It's like, how do we teach these things that every moment is just a teachable moment? It's something to learn from. It's not good or bad. Yeah, it's cool to win. I love to win for sure, but what can we learn whenever we fail? What can we take from this? Yeah, it doesn't feel good, but maybe that's what you had to go through to help you become what you need to be.
No doubt. Uh, as we start wrapping it up, tell me about being an entrepreneur now, and doing all these different business ventures and things like that. What's
No,
it been
it's
like for you?
a lot of learning, man. A lot of failing, a lot of learning, but going back to the drawing board. And I have a saying that I tell myself every day, and I got it from an author named Jose Silva. He said, every day in every way, I get better, better, and better. Like, I'm never a finished product. Every day in every way, I get better, better, and better. And for me, that helps me, like, you know what, I'm going to fail, but I'm going to get better from it. You know, I'm going to succeed, I'm going to get better from it. Either way, like, nothing's good, nothing's bad, everything just is, and just keep going, you know, and just know that if you go along the right path, I've never done entrepreneurship before, but I believe in the mission behind what we're doing, because I believe it's going to help so many kids. The right resources will show up. You know, it's just when you do what resonates with you, everything falls into place. And it's so true, man. It's I've met great people like yourself that I had no way. We didn't meet at a conference. It was like a LinkedIn request, and boom, like, oh, dude, you're a pretty cool guy, man. Like, it was cool to connect with you, you know. But it was just the intuition, like, hey, I like what he's doing, and just connect with him, you know. And so the rest is history from there.
Yeah, it's been great meeting people like yourself on LinkedIn. I mean, it's just crazy the I guess 6 degrees of separation with people in our field, you know, basketball coaches, but doing multiple different things. And so many of us are doing multiple different things and working together. And it's been really cool. You know, and a lot of us have podcasts where we can have these long discussion forums where this is a basketball podcast and we didn't even talk about basketball, you know, and that's
Maybe mentioned it a little bit, yeah, but
maybe mentioned it, but
definitely didn't go into how to attack a 1-3-1 defense, or, you know, what kind of man off. Like, yeah, that wasn't. That's why I loved your show, is beyond buckets, man. It's a great, you know, something that relates to everybody.
Well, you know, anybody that if you can go online and search some things, you can figure out is or how to attack a 1-3-1 defense or
Yeah.
anything, right? But you know, the stories that go beyond the game is so important. And I find myself more fascinated with people's stories rather than the X's and O's. You know, I used to be an X's and O's guy, but now it's more about the relationships. There's relationships with the people like yourself, and you know, just continuing to grow with that growth mindset. Like you're trying to, like you just said about the, you know, the author. You're trying to get better every single day. That's all we're all trying to do. Anybody that is you know trying to be better, let's do that all together. And I think it's very important. So,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
where can everybody follow you?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm on LinkedIn. We have a 4D Athletes web page. Again, that's number 4, the letter D. Athletes.com is our website. You know, we're on Facebook, LinkedIn. You know, our Instagram page is new, so we haven't got a bunch of stuff up there yet. Again, we're pretty new to the scene. But yeah, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and actually I'm on Clubhouse now as well, which is a new platform that's really powerful stuff there. And it's like I tell people, Clubhouse is like LinkedIn and podcast had a baby, pretty much. Is kind of what I explain it to people. But and my last thing, Chris, is like my number one goal in life is just to grow. Like whether I fail or whether I succeed, my goal is to grow, and that's a pretty cool space to be in, because, you know, like, there's no like expectation of I have to be this $1 billion company. It's like if I fail or if I succeed, like, did I get better from it? Did I grow from it? If I did, then that's a success, because I gave my best effort.
Definitely. Last question. If there was somebody that should be on Beyond the Buckets, knowing the type of content that we're trying to put out, who would it be? And before you say that name, you got to make the connection as well.
My man, co-founder Jimmy Huber, man. You know, he's been coaching for 30 years. He's coached 70 Division I basketball players. He coached Michael Porter in high school, and he's been a mentor of mine for 8 years. And, you know, he's just a genuinely great guy. So I'll be sure to connect you with him, most definitely.
Definitely. And I think I'm coming on your podcast in March or something like that.
I think so. Yeah, I have to look at the schedule,
Okay.
but yeah, I think it's coming up soon. Right? Hey, right? Perfect time for March Madness, man. Here we go.
Definitely. March Madness in the bubble. I believe it's in San Antonio this year, or maybe
Is it San? I thought it was Indianapolis.
the Indianapolis for the men, and the women are in San Antonio, I believe. So,
Are they? Okay.
yep. Well,
Yeah.
good deal, man. I
Well, at least we're
appreciate.
having it this year, man.
Hello. Definitely. Well, I appreciate your time, man, and just a great, awesome story. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Thank you for listening to the Beyond the Buckets podcast. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and share the show with your friends. And until next time, take care.